Hello, I'm Fibonacci. I lead BD for Super Team Canada, and I'm here with Nick, co founder of Helius, not Helium. We're here live from the Toronto Build Station for the Frontier Hackathon. And if you're competing in Frontier or if you're looking to build on Solana, looking to use Helius data and RPCs, this is definitely the workshop for you. And please, if you have not yet, make sure to register for the Colosseum Frontier Hackathon before they shut down the ability to create your project. And with that, I will pass it off to our incredible speaker, Nick. Nick, thanks for being here.
All right, thanks, Fib. Hey, everyone. So I'm Nick, one of the co-founders of Helius. What I have for you today is a very janky, very brief deck that I totally did not just put together 5 minutes before this. So the way we're actually going to do this, because the topic of building on Solana and streaming and RPCs, yada yada, is like pretty broad. So I don't think it'd be particularly useful for me to kind of go over things randomly, comprehensively. I'd rather just think a little more interactive. So I'll go like kind of top level on just a couple things, and then it'd be a lot more useful if I get a sense of, the rough level people are at, like what type of stuff people are doing in the audience right now, like who's new to Solana, who's not. And then I'll leave most of the time just for like Q&A. Like you can kind of tell me what you're trying to build, and there's something you're stuck on, or something you're trying to figure out, like how do I make this, whether you care more about latency or saving costs, whatever it is. And we can like dive into like situations, and I can use those to kind of elaborate. That way we're going to focus more on the content that's like relevant to you guys than me just like regurgitating a bunch of stuff that's already online in docs and our blogs. So before I kind of go in, I guess first I just need to get a sense of where people are at. So maybe like, I guess like maybe show of hands of who's built on Solana before, done any Solana development. So everyone's here is like first time Solana development. Shit. Okay. All right. Cool. Wow. All right. This is why we do it this way. Okay. Otherwise, it'd be like just diving into random stuff that would make no sense. Okay. Has anyone heard of Helius before? Show of hands. Yeah. Some. Bald Man Mert, maybe. Angry guy on Twitter. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That I went to university with that guy. And so, yeah. So I guess you're somewhat familiar with us. If you don't know what we are, I tell my mom or like my like grandparents or something that we're kind of like a Home Depot we sell tools to build like applications to the internet. Or other people I say we're kind of like a AWS but for crypto. In a more like definitive sense, what we do is we have RPCs, which is basically like an API. And I tell people if you want to read or write data like to and from Solana, like we're kind of a one-stop shop to do that. You can build your applications around our data. And what we try to really do is we try to make it easy to build on Solana by kind of like encapsulating a lot of the kind of the pain and complexity away, so you can just kind of focus more on building your application. We also run all this sort of stuff around the world on bare metal servers. And what you get is when you are on a free plan or a paid plan or whatever, you get like often like one endpoint or one thing you can use in your code. But then wherever your customers are or your apps are, will connect to like the closest servers and do all that sort of magic to like behind the scenes route what you're trying to do to like a system that's like optimized for that one purpose. I know it's kind of vague, but the gist of it is we just try to make stuff easier for you. So I guess you can go to the next slide. Again, very, very janky here. First thing, I guess who's familiar with like, if I say RPCs, do you know what I mean by RPC? Or like Solana RPCs, maybe not. Okay, what about APIs? Like just general, like the concept of an API. Yeah, okay, cool. So RPC, it means remote procedure call. That doesn't actually really matter, but you've heard of like REST APIs. RPC is just another type of way to communicate to and from a server. Now, there is a thing called JSON RPC, which is basically like a back and forth client server communication with JSON. Really simple, send JSON. Like I want this, gives you JSON back. Awesome. The Solana like has a native API that uses JSON RPC. So every single node in the Solana network can optionally host an API on it that lets you read data. So if you want to figure out, hey, this wallet, how much money does it have? Or if I want to send a transaction, or if I want to check like maybe what's the state of this account look like, or what accounts are owned by this program, you query that API. And so colloquially, what's become a term now, RPC, is actually referring to, I guess, a Solana node that is not voting. So it's not actually like building blocks. It's just like observing the network, so to speak, right? So, and it has the current state of Solana, and it has an API on it that you can query to get data. So if you have a user that's going on your application, let's say you want to, I don't know, show their trade history, you'll query an API to figure out how much they hold of USDC and Sol and Bonk and whatever it is. And if you want to make a trade or something, you'll send that transaction usually through an RPC to then get it included in the network. And then when people talk about an RPC provider, they're referring often to someone like Helius. And what that means is basically run that API sort of as a magical like cloud-like service all over the world. So you just get like a little URL and you can send your requests back and forth, and we will just figure out how to get you that data in the fastest way possible. Is that making sense so far? Kind of? Yeah, there's like some groundwork there, but like people say RPC provider, they mean Helius, but it's kind of like an evolution of the word, so to speak, you know what I mean? Something that's important to note also, which where it gets a little more, I wouldn't say complex, but is that the way Helius, what we do differently is when we first started 3 years ago or so, people, when they did RPCs, they would basically just run a bunch of Solana nodes, have them not vote, throw some load balancers in front of it, then add like a, authentication, reverse proxy, all that sort of stuff, a metering system. They call it a day and that's their product, and that's great. The thing with that though is it's expensive, slow, and it sucks. So we did instead is we built all that stuff from scratch. So like if you're doing you're not actually ever really going to a Solana node now, you're going to some optimized system we built that sort of like mirrors that data, but we restructure it in a way so that we can serve it to you way faster. Now, what does that mean? It just means that your queries are faster. So if you're on your application, you want to like load something, it's not going to take like 5 seconds. It's going to take like 50 milliseconds. The other thing too is it's cheaper. Like just running a bunch of these Solana nodes is just expensive because every Solana node has to do a bunch of stuff that you don't need to do for running an API, if that makes sense. So when I refer to native RPCs, you can look up like Solana RPC, and there's like documentation on like the Solana website. We also have it on our website. But when I say native, I mean that's the API that just exists on Solana. So it's kind of common across every provider. And we have a bunch of optimizations for that, like to make it faster. But you can also go to another provider, and it should, in theory, give you the same data back. Right? It should be common. It's a common interface. If you go to the next slide, the other thing we have is we have some custom RPCs. So these are kind of some like in-house bespoke stuff we built that you won't find other places as well, that we built because we felt like they were just missing and need to be built. So a couple examples. One is like get transactions for address. The idea here is if you're trying to look at the history of a wallet, for example, if you did that normally on Solana, you have to call one method that's called get signatures for address. It would give you all these transaction signatures. Then for every signature, you'd have to then load the transaction for it. This does that all in one shot. It also does another nice thing too, which I can show in the docs later, but Solana has a lot of like annoying quirks. So for example, like if you have a wallet that's holding tokens, the tokens actually go in these things called token accounts, and your wallet owns the token accounts. You might wonder, why does that matter? Well, because when you then query for the history using the native RPC, it won't give you the history of those token accounts. It'll only give it to that wallet. So if someone sent something to that token account that you own, it won't appear. So then all of a sudden, you'll have like some missing transaction in your user's history. So people do these crazy workarounds for that. They'd query all these different methods and do this complicated stuff. You just don't need to do that. You can just use this endpoint and do one query and you get everything you need. So that's the kind of category of problems we try to solve. Some other ones that are useful too, if you run into them, is like things like get program accounts. We have a V2 version, same for get token accounts by owner. The reason the V2 endpoints are nice, a couple reasons, but one of them is that both of these are not paginated. So if you query this, sometimes it gives back like millions and millions of rows back. The one we have is paginated, has other nice stuff. So I know this might be going over your head. It's kind of hard because there's all these distinct problems that different people have on Solana. We usually have different solutions, see? And then the thing is too, this is not planned, but you don't have to deal with this, right? So we have a team that gets woken up at night through pages like this, and this one doesn't actually matter. Someone else can deal with it. But we get woken up, so you don't have to. And that way it's just working 24/7. And you get to have family dinners and Christmases and stuff, and we don't. And that's what you pay for. Seriously, that's like half of it. I used to work at AWS. It's like half the product. But anyways, where I was getting with this is that a lot of these are like specific use cases. So it'll be hard for me to go over all of them exhaustively. But what is useful is you're trying to do a certain thing. We probably have something that helps you solve that. And if we don't, let us know and we'll try to get around to building it. We're just kind of going piece by piece until things are easy to do. Next slide. So that's API stuff. The other thing is data streaming. So you want just a stream of events. Let's say you're, I don't know, you're like a trading application. You want to maybe see like how, I don't know, prices move, or maybe you want to, you're streaming like an order book or something. Then data streaming is relevant for you. Or if you just want to like maintain the state of something in your application, there's two main ways to stream. There's WebSockets and gRPC. There's WebSockets are part of that native API I talked about as well. And then gRPC is like, it's a protocol, but usually when people in Solana refer to gRPC, they're referring to the Yellowstone gRPC interface, which is just a common streaming interface for Solana that is outside the native API, but just open source and common. LaserStream is sort of like our in-house streaming thing that offers both WebSockets and gRPC. We just optimized a lot of it for speed, so you get events faster. Like you might get 200 milliseconds faster than like the native API for like WebSockets, for example. And for gRPC, like it varies from like 5 to 20 milliseconds faster, which might not sound like a lot depending on what you're building, but for certain people like traders, like a millisecond is like an eternity, and they really care about it. Generally speaking, if you're doing front-end stuff or proof of concepts, WebSockets is easier, faster, pretty easy to do. gRPC is probably better for like backends, or if you're trying to get more robust with it. It's a little more friction to get up and running, but it is one thing that's nice is it's more space efficient, so it's a little bit faster. If you costs a little bit less because it's more space efficient in terms of like the bandwidth out. And also we have a replay functionality. So if you disconnect and for whatever reason your app crashes or there's some network thing and you want to reconnect like half second later, a minute later, it'll like replay from everything you just missed so you can keep going. This is a really nice pattern. Like everything at Helius is like built on top of Helius. So like a lot of our services I talked about are like even APIs are built on top of LaserStream. So what it allows you to do is that if you need to like keep track of something, you don't want to miss events, you can just use LaserStream and then it'll reconnect and fill from where it left off. And as long as you're not like falling behind for longer than 24 hours, it'll like catch up to where you were before. It holds around 24 hours. And that's like a really nice thing to have because it saves you a lot of like headache on like workaround recovery code and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's probably the gist there. We do have like webhooks as well, but I'd say like use WebSockets to gRPC. Maybe for the hackathon, start with WebSockets. It's a little bit quicker. It doesn't have the replay, but at least you can get your POC off the ground and focus on your app, and then you can come back and swap stuff out later. Any more slides? I forgot if we're done. Yeah, so that's everything I've written down now. We have a lot more products, honestly, but I think I get bored of my voice. So like, yeah, let's just do a Q&A, I guess. If anyone has questions, we can take it off from there, or I can even just go around and bully people by asking what they're building, and then use that as an example of different tools you can use. So yeah, anyways, floor is yours.
Hi Nick, just to confirm, so basically if I want to make sure like how healthy is the wallet and like see if it was like participating in any pump fund launches or like any wash trading, can I do it through RPC?
Yeah, you can do it through RPC. I mean, tracing historical activity can be, yes, you can use the RPC. Something like get transactions for address is a great way to do it, because you can also, one thing I didn't mention with get transactions for address is you can like scope it by time period or date range. So if you're like, hey, I want to look at like last week, you can like just look at that. If you're trying to look at things like do like sleuthing though, you need to kind of like hop from thing to thing. So that means you have to make multiple RPC calls to see like, hey, this wallet was funded by this one. And you're like, well, where was that funded by? And then you gotta like jump back. One thing that is nice also about get transactions for address is that you can sort either direction. The native API can't do that. So if you want to just figure out the first transaction of an account, that can be really useful because you can figure out who funded it, which is pretty useful if you're trying to like trace history.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions on anything? It can also be like literally anything else. It can be unrelated to RPCs. I don't really care. No questions. Sure.
Probably Google this, but do you have like a NPC server or like a CLI that makes it easy to use for someone who's like brand new and like I don't know shit? So
Yeah, we do. Yeah, actually, just like last week or something, it's last week before, like our MCP is also like part of like the Claude official like plugins.
Oh, official,
plug in there
nice.
as well. Yeah, so you can even find it in that list. We do have an MCP. It's in our docs, and we have a CLI and stuff, so you can get up and started. I think actually like Evan right there. Actually, it's the one that integrated that. So
sweet, yeah,
yeah, you got that in the Claude official ones. So yeah,
cool.
Cool. Anything else?
Well, I fill in the gap here. Any general advice for a team first time building on Solana, entering into Colosseum? I think you've probably seen like 5 different Colosseum cohorts go through the Solana ecosystem and probably see a lot of the winners.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of like theme that you see across the founders that are generally at the top of the crop?
I mean, there's all the classic stuff like, you know, like high ownership and just having like that dog basically. Maybe more of an actionable thing I'd say is that like usually the things that win, and this applies outside of Colosseum, but also just for like startups in general, is like trying to solve like a specific use case and being kind of specific about that. You want to create something that is really valuable for some subset of people. And I think Mert talks about this a lot too, but sometimes what people get wrong is they try to make something that's like kind of nice for many people that no one really needs. It's a lot better to make something that some people really need, smaller in our audience, that people really actually benefit from. Then those tend to actually do well, I find.
Okay, I have one more until somebody else thinks of a question. Team dynamics as co-founders.
As co-founders.
We have quite a few people in here that have, you know, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 people on the team. You've talked about this before in previous podcasts,
Yeah.
especially with one of our own on Super Team Canada last year, where you know you have your role within your co-founders, and Mert has his role on the timeline, and your third co-founder as well, Liam as well.
Yeah.
Any advice as to like how to distribute and focus on kind of your alignment as a team going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think almost the way I think about this is different for maybe like a hackathon versus like running like a longer term company, because one's like a marriage, the other one's more kind of like a camping trip, I guess. You know, like certain things start bothering you a lot more as more time passes. But I guess like it's the common thing that does apply is that like you do need to trust each other, and then people should have different areas of ownership or focus, and then within those areas they should basically trust each other to execute that. If everyone's trying to like do everyone else's work at the same time, then you're just going to be inefficient. It sounds kind of obvious, but I think it's like kind of, I don't know, it's just a anti-pattern I see a lot of people fall into, and I think sometimes you have to avoid doing it yourself. Yeah.
I'll take one more if nobody else wants to pop their head in here. All 3 of the co-founders are Canadian or based in Canada, or were based in Canada at some point.
Yeah.
When you guys started Helius, I believe you were all based in Canada. You went to university together in Canada.
We go to university together, yeah.
Yep.
I think Liam wasn't here when we started.
Sure.
He was in the US, yeah. And Mert moved out a bit later.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty aware of you know, Mert's opinion on Canada now.
Yeah.
But you know, nothing denies the fact that you know lots of education happened here, the connections happened here at these universities.
Yeah.
There's something special that comes out of the universities in Canada, especially from Waterloo.
Yeah.
Obviously, we see a lot of talent that does leave Canada eventually.
Yeah.
but there's something that happens that allows that talent to be created in the first place. So can you talk about what it was like being in Canada in the early days? And then at what point, do you kind of see the limits on Canadian talent, and what problems do you face once you hit like a certain threshold as a founder for a company?
I mean, our case was also kind of weird because I think we had a split of people in Canada and the US. So we were incorporating the US off the bat. So in some ways, as a founder, it's like kind of a bit of the worst of both worlds because you don't get to even benefit from some of the Canadian founder benefits that exist. You get like shred. I think there's like a cap gains exemption you get. Like there's a bunch of benefits you get from being a founder in Canada. And we didn't really have that, but also we weren't like, we kind of the worst of both worlds. I guess that you're talking about like, I almost want to clarify your question, but it's like you're saying at what point is there like, do you start becoming a problem to be in Canada, or it becomes like at what point do you feel like the pain of it? Or because I don't really know if there's really a point where you necessarily do. I think that, okay, so you're right, there is a lot of really top talent that comes from Canada. It's pretty noticeable once you start spending more time in other parts of the world or tech. Like there's a lot of Canadians in pretty impressive positions across tech, and it almost seems disproportionate compared to our like population. I honestly can't tell you why that is. I think we have a pretty good education system is probably part of it. Then the other thing of why there's a bit of a brain drain, well, this is kind of tricky. It's somewhat structural. What happens is it just has to do with incentives, basically. If there are incentives such that it pulls people other places, and people are just going to do that. It's just game theory, right? Like people are humans. Like I can make more money here, I'll go here. I get taxed less here, I go here. And so that's kind of what we sort of have. And then once that pattern begins, though, what starts happening is you have more people. If people shift away somewhere else, it creates more talent density somewhere else at a certain stage. And then that creates like basically even a bit more of a cycle. So I'm not really too sure to answer like when there's a pain point, but one thing I have noticed is that even hiring, it's like I would love to hire a lot of Canadians, but I don't actually see a lot of Canadian engineers that come on my plate from recruiters. I don't really know why that is, but I do see a good amount of Canadians that live in the US who do come across my plate. I don't know if that answers that question at all. It's not really an answer, but more of like
No,
an
it was more of a
observation.
discussion topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to take any one or two last questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, I'm new to Solana, and then a couple weeks ago I built like a toy example
Sure.
with ChatGPT, and then Helius came up, so I'm really happy to see you here. I was like, oh, that's cool. My
Cool.
question is like somebody who is new to Solana or this ecosystem, coming from like Web2 background, like I'm worried like the old ecosystem, all the necessaries apps are built like you did a couple years ago. Like my question is like, how is the ecosystem now? Like, how did it change? Like, what's
No, that's a great question.
still good place to work on today?
Yeah, crypto's gone through a lot of cycles. I think it went through, there's sort of like the crypto macro cycle and then like the sort of even cycle within Solana. Solana back when we started was just finishing up the NFT kind of craze, tail end of that. And then there was like a meme coin like craze in Solana. And then now it's kind of died down. And so I think really like the current like sort of meta and where I think the long-term direction of Solana, but also like I think crypto in general is basically like finance and trading and integration with like TradFi and traditional finance. So it's maybe a little less exciting than maybe some other things, but I think it's like the groundwork you really need to have. Once you actually have more of a robust integration, you actually have like liquidity in these markets, then it actually makes all the other sort of like apps that people tried building like years ago, some DeepIn stuff or various things, actually will have probably better success with PMF because there's already more users and more, I guess, capital on the chain that then makes having like a native integration more valuable. So to tie that back into like what's a relevant area to focus on, I'd say is anything financial, anything payments, finance, trading. Privacy is pretty hot right now as well too. So anything privacy related, all that requires like ZK knowledge. Most of the times it's pretty tough. And anything related to integration with like everyday use and traditional finance would be all like really good areas to focus on.
Oh, since you mentioned the ChatGPT thing, that reminded me to when I was like initially looking, and Helius comes up normally, so it's an honor to be in the same room. My question is, what's because you guys are building so heavily on infra, right? What's one infra problem that you see in the blockchain industry today that no one's talking about?
No one's talking about.
Or
Yeah. Think for a second. I think that no one's talking about. I guess to answer your question more directly, I'd say that it's some of the things that we've tried to build, which is, I think when we're trying to solve infra problems and things like blockchains, something that's kind of tough is that the person who's trying to serve the data, like us, is not paid for that data growing, the data set growing. Like if you write to the blockchain, right, like you increase the ledger, it grows and grows and grows and grows, right? You don't pay us that salary. You're not like you're sending a transaction, say, hey, for Helius to store it, here's like $1, right? So there's sort of an asymmetry where that like cost will grow and grow to host. And then as the data set gets bigger and bigger, I think that what not everyone focuses on, which is I think why we had done well, is how do you basically engineer a system so that you can maintain that and make it cost effective and still very performant, as well as also be able to verify that you're not missing data. Like Solana is close to 500 trillion transactions. How do I know I'm missing one or not? It's not that easy to do, right? And then, so stuff like that, I think people don't really focus on. And then we find all these like weird issues with other providers because we test against them where there's something they have off. And so it's that thoroughness that I think that not everyone thinks about, because it's not really particularly fun or sexy, but it's important. That's my direct answer. The more exciting answer, which people used to talk about a lot like 2 years ago, and then no one solved it, but I still think it needs to be solved, is like historical account state. So if you want to look up like the state of an account arbitrarily at some point in the past, that's something that's definitely needed on Solana. Note that not all blockchains have the same architecture. So like when I'm talking about like looking up account state, that might not be relevant for another chain or not even hard another chain, depending on its architecture. But in Solana, it is. Because as I mentioned, there's about 500, what was it? 500 billion transactions, half a trillion, 500 billion. And every one of those will mutate account state. So if you want to save the state of all accounts at a point in time, you're going to have like, you can kind of imagine how much that like data size will blow up. It gets into like the, I don't know, thousands of petabytes type of size if you do it naively. So that's a cool problem that no one's really talking about these days, or people have just given up hope about hoping someone's going to build, but we'll work on it pretty soon. So yeah, we'll cook something up there. Yeah. Anything else?
Hello, it's me again,
Hello.
Fibonacci. My question sort of plays off of the questions that have been asked, but we have a lot of individuals here who are new to Solana development, and I would love to know from your perspective, beyond finance and payments, for example, how you see Solana facilitating more efficiency or improving other industries or applications, like outside of what we're seeing currently.
Well, I guess like, I think the biggest benefit is actually like indirect of those things you just mentioned. That's my most honest answer, because the reason is that like capitalism is a very effective force, like incentive structure, incentive alignment, incentive structures is a really powerful way to create things. And basically like crypto allows for like more efficient capitalism, more efficient movement of capital, more efficient capital formation. If you want to go and raise money for an idea, you could do that more easily on Solana than maybe you could grant VC. You can crowdfund things more easily. There's a lot of benefits to that, and I think that leads to basically a faster rate of innovation, which then indirectly impacts everything else. That's actually the most like strongest sort of bull case I have actually for crypto. And a more like direct answer, I guess, of other stuff, there's cool things like Deepin, I think are obviously, I've always thought Deepin's really cool. It hasn't really fully taken off, but like things like Hive Mapper is really cool. I know people are familiar with them, but you can like, it's like a Google Maps, but it's like crowdsourced and you get like paid to drive around. So if you're like driving to work and you regularly hit routes that no one else hits, you get like rewarded for that. And then it just crowdsources the map structure. And I think that's really kind of cool because you can kind of do that on a blockchain and then kind of it fits really naturally, these sort of like crowdsourced things. That's a cool side case as well. But there's other stuff as well, like verification and privacy related stuff and ZK all fits really nicely. I know I'm rambling now, but like that layer of things is also really cool too. Yeah.
Any other questions from the room? Yeah.
So if, let's say, for example, you were building a consumer app today, how would you structure your data? Because we all would love to use Helius, but we're
Yeah.
very early stage. So how would you structure your, RPCs and real-time data?
Like usage, I guess it depends on what you're building. What are you thinking of building?
I'm thinking of like a donor incentive platform for
Okay.
donations. So
And how does the incentivization
it's it tracks basically events that happen, like when donations are recorded.
Mhm.
Those events need to be tracked on chain.
Okay. Well, I think that like the first thing I guess to figure out when you're building something like this is, do you have any logic that you care about that is not on chain that you want to like merge with on chain data? As soon as you have a case where, let's say you have something about your app where you want someone to like log in and verify themselves with like KYC or something, so actually have to show who they are and maybe it's a Google login and stuff. And then you have to maybe include something about that in your on-chain thing later to kind of, you have some architecture like that. If you have some requirement like that, then you might need to query things across like your data model and what's on chain. If you have that case, then you're probably going to have to store stuff in your own database. In which case, what you're going to want to do is use something like LaserStream or WebSockets if you're just trying to like get it out the door. But long term, LaserStream in the back end, you're going to put that into a database where you also have some of your own off-chain data, and then you can query both of it together. If you're just starting out, something like Postgres is probably easiest. So you can kind of like, do joins and stuff on the data. If everything is fully on chain, you've have your own program, like smart contract and stuff, and you have it all on chain, then it becomes a little bit easier. You're just sending transactions, then to query state. What you can do is you can use a mix of the RPC methods to query things. So it again depends on what you're trying to show. So if you're trying to show like someone's donation history, maybe the way you could do that is you could crawl their transaction history and then find the ones that match with the donations. That would be like the naive way. But then later you might run into cases where like, okay, I have this person that does 1 million trades. They do 1 million trades of something else, and then they donate again. And that's like now kind of annoying because you don't want to scan through 1 million, then show that one. And then in that case, maybe what you want to do is now go back to that streaming approach where you're just kind of storing your own like quicker view of stuff, like only the stuff that matters for you.
Off-chain?
Yeah, exactly. And then you're using that as basically like a almost like a cache or a quick lookup to show it faster for users. So it's sort of like there's a Twitter thread on this as well. It's kind of a good overview, but I guess my answer is you can start with using all like the native RPCs and you can get out the door really quickly. And then you start figuring out like, okay, what's actually annoying for my users? Like, is this loading too slow for this one case? And then you can start like optimizing for that. I wouldn't start off the bat trying to be like, hey, I'm gonna like put everything in a database and try to make everything like overly complex, because then it takes you like longer to get to market. I'll just focus on optimizing like per scenario, I guess.
Okay,
I don't know if that
thank
makes
you.
sense at all.
It did,
Yeah.
to some extent, yes.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm back.
Nice. I booted.
You're not you're not booted, but
Yeah.
don't want to hold you up too long.
Cool. Good.
You good? Okay.
Good. Am I walking off? I'm so confused.
No, stay.
Okay.
Sorry.
What are we doing?
I, I, I didn't want to boot you off, and you. This is great.
I'm chilling.
This
Good.
is what happens when you put crypto builders in a room in front of a camera. All right. Well, this was excellent. Thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, this is very interesting, and I really like what you said about solutions that are simple. We had a workshop yesterday from Moon Settler. He talked about how simplicity, simplicity might not scale right away, but complexity breaks.
Yep.
It's more likely to break. And please stay tuned because we have another workshop after this in about 20 minutes with Jas, the founder of Astrolane. And if you have more questions for Nick about Helius, who should builders contact for questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be here for the next couple days. Also, if you're in Toronto, I mean, Evan there is on our team, and he can answer pretty much anything, probably better than I can. And he's part of Super Team Canada as well, so he's here often. And then we also have we got like different like support channels as well, where honestly like all of us are in there as well. So we jump into it. We got a pretty good support team. I'm also on Twitter. Mert's on Twitter, and we're pretty active as well. So just pick your favorite way of yelling at us, and then do that.
And one last question. You may have already answered this, but I didn't catch it. How does Helius support founders or earlier stage teams in the space? What are the programs or opportunities that you guys have available?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's a good call out. We do have a what's it called? It's like a startup like accelerator or like program as well. You can basically apply, and then we kind of review it and we accept a certain like cohort periodic, like every couple of months we just accept more, and then you basically get like pitch deck reviews from like Mert and stuff. You're doing like fundraising, but then also you get like a pretty good discount on like some of our plans. I think we give like it's like significantly discounted for a business plan. I think for like 6 months or something. It's a pretty good deal. And then you get like an extra support channel that you usually would only get if you're on like one of the bigger plans. So that can be a really good way for people to kind of get off the ground. And oh yeah, we also have like half price on our developer plan right now too for this month. I think it's like $20 right now. So yeah.
Awesome. Great news.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, we do have our final sprint, which is if you're not in Toronto right now and you do want to come out and talk to, maybe not Nick, he won't be here, but Evan will be here. And Evan has a lot of information. You will find him here at some point. Please come out to our final sprint week for the build station. That is May 4th to 11th in Toronto. And otherwise, we have remote build coming up, so you can continue to build with us remotely. And we also have the Spark North pre-acceleration program, which is a way to get additional support for the Colosseum hackathon, dedicated mentor, credits from AWS and other providers, and more to be announced, as well as continued support after you put your Colosseum submission through. So, you submit, what's next? You'll have some continued support for weeks after the hackathon ends, and you'll have made a connection with an incredible mentor. So thank you. Thanks again, Nick. This was an excellent workshop.